A new sci-fi book was released. There is the writing event Doubling Down Days and an anniversary of an independent publisher on May 4th. Was this date chosen deliberately? I'm talking about that and much more with Zara Hoffman from Inimitable Books in our interview later this episode. I'm your host Ilse, and together with Hala, my co-producer, I bring you the latest news about ongoing and upcoming online and offline writing events, books published by indie authors, hybrid authors, and small publishers, and much more. Let's dive into this week's indie author news. April is always a month with a lot of writing events, and this time was no exception. The Golden Quill Month has just been closed yesterday. How did it go for you? I have to say, for the first time, I did not set any goals for April, but despite that, I did achieve quite a lot. And in my next author vlog, I will tell you all about that. May 2nd this year is the day to double down on your word count. This is an event that is from the Heart Breathing community, and the goal is to double down your word count that you usually manage to achieve. Join Kay Paquette and other authors on May 2nd to crank up your word count. If you see our show after May 2nd, how did it go for you? Did you manage to double down your word count? Let us know in the comments below. The Authortube Writing Conference is inviting you to become a guest speaker at their conference. It takes place in November this year. Check out their site, which is linked in the show notes below, and see what you can contribute to this conference. And as usual, we also have an overview of the live streams that are happening on Twitch and YouTube for you, especially with writing sprints and much more. On a Monday, you can join me both here on YouTube and on Twitch. You can also join Miranda and Holly Davis in our live streams. On Tuesday, Shannon Huston, the Paper Tiger, and Mama Maggie, as she is affectionately called, also take over to guide you through more live creative sessions. And these creative sessions are followed on Wednesday by productivity sessions with Kay Paquette, the Dawdling writer, and Jenna the Soul writer. Thursday, you can look forward to joining me again here on YouTube and on Twitch, and Laura Crampton and the eccentric Raven for creativity and productivity sprints. You can close your week and ring in the weekend on Friday with Foggy and Hoggy, the Dawdling writer, and Jenna the Soul writer. To start your weekend off great, you can join Cat's Novel Adventures, Miranda and Gillian, Jamie, and the Paper Tiger on Saturday. And to close the week, you can join Kay Paquette, Paper Tiger, Doc Coleman, Morgan Hazelwood, and Sako Toomey on Sunday for various live streams. Let us know which live streams you are going to attend and what your achievements were last 2 weeks. We have a book release from a genre that's quite different from the genres we have covered earlier. Sci-fi! You may know Brad Jackson, or the Foggy author, from live streams during the Under 1K Sub Marathon and other writing events, and of course his own videos and live streams on his own channel. On April 27th, he released his book Time Clones Book 2. Just when you thought it was all over, it's time to gear up and get ready to travel once more. This time, Zach travels into the future where he meets new friends and old enemies. Along the way, he grapples with personal dilemmas, confronts moral quandaries, and unravels the mysteries of his own identity. This time travel tale will take you out of your armchair and into a high-paced action as Zack attempts to unravel the mysteries of the future and what it holds. Zack is back, and this time he travels 100 years into the future to battle his old adversary once again. But things have changed. Oliver's plans and the local landscape may be completely different, but his motivation remains the same. Will Zack and his newfound friends be able to stop Oliver before he leads everyone on Apatol Hill to their fate, what new tech has Oliver discovered that makes things so much easier for him to fulfill his plans? Discover new characters, new locations, new methods of time travel, and more in the second book of the Time Clones trilogy. In our previous shows, we featured Dragons and Dreams by Rachel D. Adams and Dawn MacClellan. Have you had a chance to read this conclusion to the Dragon Tasker series? What did you think of this conclusion? What were your favorite moments? What more or whom would you like to hear more about? We also featured world building blueprints from Marie Mullany. Do you world build for your game or book? What is the latest feature of your world you have created? Speaking of interviews, I have done an interview with Zara Hoffman from Inimitable Books that's celebrating its 4th anniversary this Monday, the 4th of May. Now, let's see if that date was deliberately chosen. Welcome in, Zara. I'm very happy that you joined us. You have the 4th anniversary of your indie publishing company coming up. And so yes. I am very looking forward to hearing all about it. But first, can you tell us a bit about who you are and how you decided, or when you decided, to start your own publishing company? Because that seems like quite a feat to me.
Absolutely. So my name is Zara Hoffman. I'm a self-published author, but first and foremost, a reader, lover of books. And then I wanted to work in traditional publishing. I thought first as a book editor, and then I thought as a literary agent. And then the reason I started my own publishing company is that I went to grad school to learn about the publishing industry. Mm-hmm. And the final project for that, at the end of the 2-year program, is what they call a capstone. And you have to create a business plan for a new business or a new vertical within an existing business. So for people who have heard of things like Epic Reads or Reactor Magazine, or Reactor Books, or I'm sorry, basically, there are publishers that have websites that are aimed at readers to basically be like, hey, here are book recommendations. By the way, we're going to slip our own books in there as well. So you could have done that, or you could have said, I'm going to start my own publishing company.
Okay.
And you do a business plan. You have to project the financials of that business, because we had taken multiple courses on accounting and publishing. Those were mandatory. And man, if you break a spreadsheet, that's good luck. But having done all of that, I was very excited, and I thought, I'll put this in my back pocket, and maybe one day I'll create my own publishing company after I've been a literary agent. Maybe I'll be a literary agent, get hired by a publishing house eventually, become an editor, and then strike out on my own. Okay. I thought this was very far off in the future. I graduated from the grad school program in 2022. At the time, I had a job at a literary agency, which was part of a talent agency, and I had taken the job because it sounded amazing. And then it became very clear while I was there that they were viewing books as only a pipeline for their other work. And so it felt a little bit like, I don't know that I love it here, but we live, at least I live in America, which is very rough when it comes to healthcare and insurance. So I was holding on to the job. And then they let me go right before that insurance would have kicked in.
Oh, no.
And that, at will hiring, like, it sucked, but understandable. But it just kind of made me feel like, I could have left sooner if this was going to be it. I could have tried to find a job at a literary agency, a different one, tried something else in publishing, maybe like done a stint in marketing, because I do like book marketing.
Okay.
But I also really love working on the books themselves. And in traditional publishing, the marketers don't always get to read the book. So they might not always have like the ability to make as many ideas as I have, having read the books and then been like, oh, let's pull from this. Let's do XYZ. Have you thought of this?
Oh, okay.
But it's a skill set I have, and it would have been potentially able to get me paid. And I had started an Authortube channel back in, I think, 2021, after finding Kate Kavanaugh and a bunch of other Authortubers who were running writing sprints while we were all in lockdown. And they heard that, like, oh, I had gotten into this grad school program, and people were like, oh my God, you should make a YouTube channel. You should vlog that experience. And I did. Vlogging was hard. I'm actually trying to get back into it for the publishing channel now. But I had all these writer friends now that I hadn't had in real life. And when they heard that I had been let go from my job, they were all like, that sucks. Like, screw them. I don't know if I can curse on this podcast. I will.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
But I was like, well, it sucks, but I'll figure out the next thing to do. And multiple people were like, well, don't you have a 20-page business plan and financial plan? Just like make your own publishing company. Make it real.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that's not something you do on a whim. You know, there's business formation fees, there's, you know, banking stuff, there's who's going to want to be published by a nobody who just got out of school. Yes, has some internships and experience on a resume, but not even 5 years when all added together. Like, who's going to take a chance on me? And I still did it, though, because I did think I had something to offer. As a self-published author, I thought there are problems in traditional publishing. There's not enough transparency a lot of times to authors. There are things that take way too long because there's so much bureaucracy, or people still don't know technology like they should. Like, I was in grad school, had a teacher who asked my whole class if we knew what word track changes were. And we were all like, we've been using it for at least a decade. Why does it sound like you have only started using it in the past 2 years? So it just felt like, you know what? I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work out, I'll at least have tried something, and I can always apply to more jobs in the future. And then I had a professor in the program who saw what I was doing, reached out to me before we published our first book, and was like, hey, I want to share in your company. I'm going to hook you up with Simon & Schuster. You're going to get distribution. You're going to get in bookstores. You're going to have all these opportunities. Nice. And I took him up on that deal. And it's been crazy because that's like exponential growth that I had not planned for. Instead of dealing with things in the hundreds or having to acknowledge that, like, we're not going to make a lot of money on each book because print on demand is rough.
Yeah.
Now I do print runs with an amazing printer in China. It is not super expensive to make each book, but you have to order in bulk.
Okay.
Is a bigger bill than I was ever expecting up front. You have to deal with international shipping times. And not just like, oh, I bought a product and it might take a month. These are commercial shipping things that take up to 5 months.
No. Oh my God.
So you have to deal with a lot more than I ever thought I would have to this early. I thought, you know, we'll start small, we'll grow incrementally. Hopefully we don't stagnate at a place that's not sustainable. And then, you know, dream big. You know, maybe one day I'll sell it to a big 5. And instead it was out of the gate almost, you are being distributed by a big 5 publisher. You are going to be presenting to them. They will have feedback for you on covers. They will have feedback for you on, I don't think this month is the right month to publish this type of book. And they've all been so lovely and so helpful and also really collaborative. And so I love my partnership with Simon & Schuster. But it's all of these things where I'm so excited, but there's so much more admin to do when there are more chefs in the kitchen than I initially thought there would be.
Wow. Wow. Incredible. That's the way that you got this a head start in a way.
Absolutely.
That just is so good for you, and I love it for you.
I love it too.
I can imagine that. Yeah. You said you started with one book. Do you remember which book you started with? What the first book was that you were going to publish?
So the first book that we signed was Down the Well by Veronica King. I'd actually done a podcast with her under her real name, and she's public about her real name, but I try to keep it as like Veronica King. So if people want to look it up, they find it. In 2025, it was named a distinguished favorite in the young adult fiction category by the Independent Press Award. And I'm so, so proud of her. The first book we published was by someone else, was the second signed book, and we have since reverted those rights. We had different visions, creative visions, different priorities, and so I can't really say the title of that, because if you search it, you then get the self-published version, which is not necessarily what I had edited. I don't know if the author re-edited it and then put it out. So they are doing their own thing now. And as a self-published author, I don't look down on self-publishing like I think a lot of traditional publishing does. So, more power to them. But that means our first signed book is now the first one I mentioned. And after that, I signed a book from a stranger who did not know me, who found me through social media, and queried. And I loved the idea, asked for the manuscript very quickly. It was long, and I was like, I think some of this should be saved for a sequel. I know you said you were thinking of this as a trilogy anyway. And in traditional publishing, you can want something to be a series, but unless the author's already successful in the past, a lot of publishers won't do that right out of the gate. Even though series tend to sell well when they sell well. But I've always been annoyed as a reader when a series gets signed and then it drops off and the author doesn't have the resources to self-publish it, so I, the reader, never get to know how it ends. So unless something goes horribly, horribly wrong, Inimitable Books the goal is to always finish a series.
Nice.
Because I don't want to run my publishing company in a way that'll piss off readers in a way that I know I get pissed off as a reader. So that the first book that we signed, Down the Well, was going to be the start of a trilogy. The author later decided, hey, I just want to make it a duology. Cool. The second book came out at the end of 2025. That's called Cliffs of Wayward. Also love that book. Really cool. The next book we signed was The Storm Gathers by Maitland Holiday, which is very much like Game of Thrones, but I don't love a lot of adult fantasy that is published because there's always, trigger warning, sexual assault that does not need to be in the story. And it's often gratuitous. And, there are some writers who do it well in that they're like, oh, no, it's not just for shock value. Like, it's actually tied to the character. But as a reader and a writer, I'm thinking, but you didn't have to make that their tragic backstory. There are so many other ways to have character growth, have reasons for change, XYZ. So I really love that this book didn't have that. And this author is great at world building. And it's the start of a trilogy. Book 2 came out last year, The Shadow Rises. That book is twice as long as the first one. So there's a lot. We found an amazing audiobook narrator who's been killing it.
Wow.
The book will have an audiobook as well. And so love that. So like person I knew, new person. Then after that, I signed someone who I had met years ago online, and then met in person more recently. And it was the first book that I had known her from, because she wanted to get traditionally published with this book. We were both writing paranormal romances at the time. She then wound up writing like fae romances, self-publishing them way before Sarah J. Maas and Court of Thorns and Roses, and everyone being like, oh my God, fae, like, love it. And it's great, because if that means that her self-published books do better, then more people will know this author's name, Jessie Elliott, and maybe they'll look into her traditionally published books. Like, all of it, you know, we'll take the marketing clout where we can get it.
Of course.
But she had been working on this book called The Devil's Waltz for years. And it was young adult, then it was new adult, then it was young adult again, XYZ. And I was just finally like, I would like this. And she's like, I just haven't worked on it in a while, because she had self-published stuff under her name, multiple things. She is also still self-publishing under a pen name.
Wow.
So she's juggling 2 author careers on top of a normal day job.
Wow.
And I was like, I want this book. I, as a teen, fell in love with paranormal romance. As an adult, I'm like, wow, a lot of those things were really unhealthy. Like, but they were good stories, you know? And people still feel that way about books. And so I was like, I want this story. And I feel like this book is actually much more healthy than a lot of the paranormal stuff I read growing up. And I just really loved the story. And I was like, I want you to finally get to the end. I was like, get to the end, give us more, because it is also going to be a trilogy. Book 2 came out last year. As at the time of recording this, we are nearing the end of book 3's production, and it'll be going off to the printer soon-ish.
Nice.
Which is so exciting. And then we have our other books. We have a Rapunzel retelling, which is great. And that was the duology. And it's like very dark, and I really love it. It's like epic fantasy, but for young adult.
Okay.
And then I signed a fairy tale retelling, which is a little bit like the movie Enchanted, but reverse. So instead of a fairy tale character coming to the real world, it's a real person going into the fairy tale world, which also sounds like Once Upon a Time, but in that case, it's kind of like both. It goes both ways. But I really like that. And then the book I signed after that was another Rapunzel retelling, coincidentally. So I kind of just went through this little phase of signing on fairy tale retellings, and it's just multiple happened to cover Rapunzel, which was very funny and not intentional on my part at all. It was just what came across and what I liked. And then I went a little bit out of the box. There are 2 Authortubers who did a ton of flash fiction and wanted to write a flash fiction writing prompt book. I was like, cool. And they asked, like, can we have stickers in the back? And I said, absolutely. Being like, oh shoot, now I have to find a printer who can do that. But there have to be, right? I grew up with all these klutz books and all these other craft books as a kid where they do that, but I can't think of an adult book that has done that. So that was really fun. And then Veronica King was like, hey, can I do a divination deck? I'm like, sure, I'll find a printer. People love divination. They love their tarot cards, oracle cards. And she's like, well, Normand. And I'm like, we will find an audience. I'm sure there's overlap. It will be fine. And so we just I kept kind of moving around, and by having signed so many series, it's been consistent with that, but then new things come in. So last year we had our first middle grade novel, which I think some people thought I was crazy, because basically, unless you're Scholastic, it's really hard to get a middle grade book out there.
Okay.
But I really love this book. We had some interest professionally, and then just things didn't fully work out. But the fact that there was interest at all, I'm like, see, like, I believe in this, and I believe it can do great things, and we shall see. And then for 2026, well, I've signed them like in summer of 2025. Before the start of 2026, we've been coming out with thrillers back to back to back. They were supposed to be February, March, April.
Okay.
The April book got moved to May because, like I mentioned earlier, there are shipping times.
Yeah.
And actually, the books were in America on time. They just got held at customs.
Oh, no.
Like for 3 longer than I expected.
Oh.
And Simon & Schuster has this rule that we need to have them 30 days before the publication day so that every bookstore can start selling them at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Kate Kavanaugh's Thanks for Watching. And we had already booked book events. At the time of this recording, we've done 2 of the 3 in New York. And we had done one in San Antonio, Texas before even coming to New York. So that's 3 out of 4. And I was like, we can't move them. We can't move the events. Kate travels a lot. People have literally booked non-refundable travel to New York or to Texas or to both. And so Simon & Schuster was like, don't worry, the books will be there. Now, we had a little bit of a hiccup with that, and that will be included in a vlog. But it all worked out. And so the month of April is still busy for me, even though we don't technically have a book out. And then May will be busy because the book is actually coming out. And we have the sequel to the fairy tale book coming out in July. And then the end of the paranormal romance trilogy coming out in October. So I like to think I'm going to have a little bit more of a break, but I'm also a workaholic and I might not give myself one. So we'll see.
Yeah, those are not the easiest things indeed, to have such a break. Yeah. But you have done so much already. So it's also time to celebrate, I guess. I can imagine. You mentioned you had one author who sent you a query. And you sounded a little bit surprised when you said that. Was that how was it like when you received that query?
I mean, it felt amazing that someone was willing to take a chance on like a completely new publisher. I think we had announced our first signed title, which was going to be the second published, and our second signed title, which was wound up being the first published. And I think that was about it. You know, I hadn't secured, we're going to be publishing this successful self-published author, like, you know, not like a huge name, but readers like her books, or this, you know, the author of the fairy tale retellings, not the Rapunzel specific ones, but the one that's in the middle. She's a multiple time Amazon best-selling author. And so we didn't have any accolades at the time, yet someone was querying me. Multiple people were querying me. I had some books that I had to pass on for one reason or another, but this one really spoke to me, and I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. And I love this book. I love all of our books, but it was just crazy because that was the first person to query me who did not know me.
Wow.
And I did not know. And then the fairy tale author queried me through a Twitter pitch competition. That's what I was trying to say. I combined the TW Twitter and pitch. Twitch is a different thing.
Yeah.
And like that also felt great to have another query from someone who didn't know me, and then to take their books and to do everything I can for them. It's just so exciting because it's one thing that like people I know, they have faith in me to attach their careers, the start of their careers as well, to a company. But then you have these people who, you know, Malin Holiday, author of The Storm Gathers, just starting out. And then you have Chantel Godori, who has published books, made Amazon bestselling list multiple times, and is still like, I would like you to be my publisher.
Nice.
Like, you're interested, and I'm not looking at your page and being like, it's cool that you like my book, but you're too small, and therefore I'm not going to even entertain anything. So it's really cool.
I can imagine that. It must... The fact that you get those people querying you, contacting you about the possibility to be published through your company, that while, like you said, while you don't have that much experience yet, that's truly amazing, and that's a wonderful achievement. So congratulations with that.
Thank you.
If you look at these last 4 years, we're approaching the 4-year deadline. The 4-year anniversary, I mean. If you look at these last 4 years, what is your favorite moments through your whole publishing journey?
I mean, I think that's hard to say because there is the magic of being queried by someone who doesn't know who I am. And I've talked about that. So I won't rehash it because I just talked about it at your request.
Yeah.
And then there's the magic of finding out that our first signed title was named a distinguished favorite by an award, and that the author got to come to New York, go to the event, get up on stage, get a medal placed around her neck. I got to buy all these, those stickers that you then put on the books where it's like, oh, there's an award associated with this book.
Wow.
And so that's amazing. The first time our foreign rights agent and subsidiary rights agent, she handles both, was like, this audiobook company wants to pay you and the author, the author gets paid as well, money to acquire the rights to make an audiobook of a title you've published.
Nice.
That's amazing. That's a lump sum that you can then turn into book marketing for that book, production for another book, book marketing for the whole company, like so many things. And that's like other people are validating it. I am lucky that I fully believe in what I'm doing, so that even if other people don't, I'm not going to suddenly be like, oh, well, I'll close up shop. But having that external validation, the year before the book got the award, that same award actually has a different award for people who work in publishing, and I was named a 40 under 40 in publishing. Wow. Which was crazy. And so that was also magical. But then more recently, being able to get bookstores to say, yes, we are happy to have your authors come in, do a book signing, even do a book talk or an interview. Like, I live in New York, and yet getting something in New York makes it feel like I have made it.
Wow.
In a way I wasn't sure I was going to be able to as the small publisher. Like, being able to say we're distributed by Simon & Schuster definitely helps. But there's a ton of competition. These indie bookstores or Barnes & Noble, because we've done multiple events at their place and we'll do another, they have limited shelf space. They have limited calendars. They are not charities. They will only say yes to what they think will do well. And for them to be like, yeah, we will do this with you, is a huge vote of confidence. So it's really, I'd say the best moments are when it's validation from someone else, and it's like, there is recognition coming. I don't need a pat on the back. The award, being told that I'm one of publishing's 40 under 40, was amazing. But the acknowledgement that the books that I have chosen, that I have put my blood, sweat, and tears into, not more than the authors, but almost as much as the authors, is being liked and well received enough that like people are talking about it or telling their friends, and then professionally being like, yeah, we think this book will sell in some capacity or another. It's just so amazing. I go on cloud 9 every time it happens.
I can totally imagine that. I can imagine the goosebumps it gives you from hearing the news of those things. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I
totally question because I gave multiple.
You mentioned Barnes and Nobles. I noticed that Kate Kavanaugh has a book signing event happening today, tomorrow?
Yes.
Can you tell a little bit more about that?
It's going to happen it's going to happen in 2 days. So it'll be our third event there. We had the other 2 thrillers there. This store manager has been amazing. The staff who actually helped set up the event have been amazing. And, we get there, there's a chalkboard sign next to the book display that's set up next to the table that has the mics where the author and I sit in front of a Barnes & Noble backdrop. So it's super official. But what's really cool about the chalkboard is that they have someone who works at the store who always adapts the book cover art.
So you were talking about the chalkboard, and the person who is doing the chalkboards also does something with the cover arts.
Yes, they adapt the cover art. And I had no idea going in, because the first time they did it, they had posted on their social media, but I was very busy leading up to Inimitable's first ever in-person book signing that I was able to go to, because our author, Holly Davis, has been able to go to book events and sign copies of her book. Jessie Elliott has gone to multiple book events and signed and sold copies of her book. But this is the first time we, meaning me, I'm able to go and see my author. And not just that, but to ask my author questions in a physical space, not just on YouTube. And so I had missed them posting the art for Grandma's Little Secret by Becca C. Smith on their Instagram. So I arrive, and they have recreated the bloody bathtub on a teal background, and it is gorgeous and chilling, and I'm just in awe, and so is the author. And then for Mother Mercy, they did the van that's on the cover on the red background. And for Thanks for Watching, they have already posted it on their social media, and they have the title Thanks for Watching in a similar font, even though it's all done by hand for the chalkboard, and then with the screen crack that is on the book cover. And it's just the little customizations that they do. Last night, at the time of this recording, we had an event for Kate Kavanaugh's Thanks for Watching, where I interviewed her at the Fountain Bookshop. And they had hung all of these little printouts from the ceiling. And for those of you who don't know, the book is And Then There Were None, but with social media influencers. And so they had a book cover hanging from a few different places, but then they had a stack of cash. They had a red envelope, which is important in the book. They had the triangular play button, which is on the book cover. They had all these cute little things hanging, and it would have been great enough to already just be there, but they have it on their front door, this event is happening tonight. They have the books at their front desk. But just seeing those little things hanging was an extra cherry on top. And it's been amazing working with these people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I saw that you had a few more events coming up. If I'm correct, Jessie Elliott is also going to, or has been, in Island and Ink Book Fair and Signing.
Yes. So that's happening the day we're recording this. That is in Canada. She's Canadian. Our Canadian author is actually there as well. I believe it's Kay Adams' first book event as an author. So she was very excited. I do not have the time memorized, so I don't know if I could text them and be how'd it go yet? But Jessie always has fun at those events. I hope Kay does as well. They're good friends as well. So if there's anything that Kay doesn't know, Jessie is really generous with explaining how things go with other Inimitable Books authors who maybe haven't done events themselves yet. And in addition to that, I think Jessie signed up for maybe 3 more events this year. She's hosting an entire book convention to happen on Halloween of 2025, and Inimitable Books is one of the sponsors. But if you then include virtual events, we have on May 4th, which is the day that Inimitable Books' paperwork completely finalized. It was not intentional that it would be on May the 4th. Star Wars fans, which I am, and so is my mom and my whole family. Not intentional, but
Just
I'll
a
take
happy
it.
coincidence.
Also, happy coincidence, the day right before my mom's birthday, so I'm like celebrating for 2 days in a row, and I'm doing 2 live streams. Each will be about 2.5 hours because authors can make it at different times. And we're just gonna like have fun, chat, talk about their experience being with the company. And then, I do writing sprints all the time. And every day on a book release, no, I don't have any authors who are local to New York at the time of this recording. I don't know if that will ever change. It's not like, ooh, there are plans that I can't talk about. There are no plans currently. But on release day, I always do a live stream with the author to be like, what's it feel like? And for people who are able to come to the in-person events, for Kate, because the events are now happening before her pub date, I'm going to try and not overlap them too much. But normally we've done the live stream and then we got lucky and got in-person events. And even with those, I try not to overlap the questions too much. It's like a conversation and an opportunity for me to, just be a fan about the book, because I am. You can't really work in publishing and not love what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to survive, because it is, unless you're really at the top, it does not pay well. It's my own company, so it really doesn't pay me well, because I'm putting everything back into it. You just got to do it for the love of the work.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Before we move on to one of the other questions I had, I noticed you have several people working for you right now, including Mandy Lynn from Stone Ridge Books and a map maker. Now, that's interesting because I am writing a fantasy story myself and I'm working on maps, and that's a fun thing. So it's good to see you as a publisher having a map maker in house. That's wonderful. How did you start out? You said you started with your business plan. Did you immediately attract more people to bring it to life, or did it gradually grow with employees?
So the 2 that you actually named are freelancers. Our only employee currently is our social media assistant, who absolutely kills it at her job. She does an amazing job. All our authors have commented on, like, we love what she's doing. Other people who are not part of Inimitable in any capacity are like, oh, we really like the stuff. So I feel very lucky to have found her. She is great. So she's our only employee currently. I'm not even listed as an employee. As the owner, but our authors are contractors, and so are our cover designers, our map maker, and I guess like in the future, if we ever get a formatter, that would start out as a contractor thing just for budgeting reasons. But it built out as the projects were coming in. I had worked with Keelan Rivers of fantasy cover design for some of my own self-published books, because I take a long time to write my books. Sometimes I write them very quickly, but I normally get the idea years before I'm able to actually write it, because I've been in school. Then I decide to start a podcast, and then also start a publishing company. And I've never been someone who, if I have free time, I'm like, I have to write. This is the only time I can write. Even though that is true, I write when I feel inspired. Doing what I'm doing with Inimitable Books does scratch my creative itch for storytelling. It doesn't feel like if I'm not telling my own, I'm not satisfied. I totally understand that for a lot of other people, and there's no judgment. But my writer friends, when they ask me, they're like, don't you miss your own writing? I'm like, would I love to have another book out and just like not have to think about like, oh, I haven't written that yet. Yes, but I'm also not chomping at the bit to do it all the time. And I say all that because I had gotten some pre-made covers that I really, really loved for a trilogy. And I wound up writing that trilogy and self-publishing it in 2021. And the cover artist by that point decided to stop doing cover art, and I couldn't reach her. And so I knew Keelan was starting to get into cover design, and she was like, hey, I need practice. Do you have anything I could work on? I was like, well, I need a spine and a back for these covers. And I bought the design, I had the right to do that. And she helped me out, and she was great. And you would never know that she wasn't the original cover designer for the front cover of those titles. And she had a website with all these pre-made covers, and I loved so many of them. And I have bought 3 from her, 3 pre-made covers for myself. And so when it was time to think of cover designers for Inimitable Books, I was like, Keelan, she can do so much. She's reasonably priced. I have a rapport with her. I know she takes creative notes. Let's just do it. And so she did the first cover of the book that has since reverted back to the author. She did it for Down the Well, its sequel. She did it for The Storm Gathers, its sequel, and will for the 3rd book. She did it for The Devil's Waltz and its sequel and its 3rd book, even though that's not yet published. And she basically did every single title of ours for a long time because I was only publishing fiction for a while. And then the writing prompt books. I had met Mandy Lynn in person on the same writing retreat where I met Kay Adams, who wrote Heirs of Bone and Sea. And I knew she did her own book covers. And she has a course for authors to learn how to do it. And I was like, I can appreciate a good book cover. I can say when something is wrong. It is not worth it for me to learn how to make book covers. That's not a good use of my time when I have to do all the admin stuff and the editing and currently the formatting. And for a while, the marketing before I was able to hire the social media assistant. So I hired her because I was like, I think you'd be great at this cover. And then she made a second one because there are 2 writing prompt books. And if they do well, we'll hopefully do a 3rd. And so then that's how she came on. With the fantasy books that we were publishing early on, I knew I love a good map in a book. And I was friends with Grayson Wild on Authortube, and he was constantly talking about I'm making maps for my books. And do you want me to make a map for your dystopian novel, my own personal story? And I was like, yes, please. Also, let me pay you. And that was a whole conversation. Because he was like, no, you're my friend. And I'm like, right. And this is a business thing, and I will pay you. So then I hired him to do the maps for Down the Well, Cliffs of Wayward, The Storm Gathers, its sequels, et cetera, et cetera. The only map that he has not done art is the one in Until the Last Page and its sequel, because that author had a friend who did art, who did Under the Dust Jacket art and the maps. So I'm very flexible on the art and creation and stuff. So if someone is like, hey, I have the talent and I want to do it, or I know someone who has the talent, I want to do it. And that brings me to Veronica King, who did her Lenormand deck where she completely designed all the art herself. She did all the art herself. She defined each card by tying it to an Inimitable Books title, which was amazing, and free marketing for the other titles, which is awesome. And the box itself is black with silver foil, but we talked about that design, and that's very simple. But then the booklet is one of the card designs, and so I was like, have at it. This is yours. I'm just going to tell you what I think will or won't do well, and then you can take notes. And then when she did her middle grade novel, From the Diary of Agnes Yeager, The Secrets of Silverleaf Academy, it's from the point of view of a teenager who is writing a diary and doodles in her book. So she did all that art in there. She does more art than just doodles in the book, kind of for the sake of the reader, which was really cool. And then she said, I would like to take a stab at the cover. And I said, you can absolutely do that. I will pay you for that art, even free labor, especially if it's going to be used commercially. But there's a chance we're not going to use it. Like, please know that. And if that happens, we can absolutely use it for marketing. We can use it for content. But, you know, I love you. I love the work you do, but I can't promise that it's going to be the best packaging for your book. Simon & Schuster might not agree, you know, and not that Simon & Schuster can veto me as the actual publisher, but they have been working in the industry for years. They know how things sell. They were fine with the cover. They're like, this is really cool. And so she did her own cover. You know, I could have gone to Keelan. I could have found another cover designer, but I'm really proud of Veronica King for having done that. So it's really about who's the best for each aspect of which book. It wasn't like I set out and I was immediately like, I need a map maker. It was, I need a map maker for Down the Well. Grayson, would you like to do this? And he was like, sure. And I'm like, great. How much do you charge? And he was like, and I'm like, no, you can't say zero. And that was very funny for me, but I think stressful for him to have to accept money from someone he knew. But then I was like, we have other books that need maps. Grayson, if you are free, I would like you to do them. And it just kept being yes. Same thing with Keelan. I'm like, we have another book. Are you free? I know you have a day job. I know you do this, though. And like, I would like to keep using your services. And it just keeps building from there.
Excellent. I feel that that's a healthy way to grow your business and keep people involved. And yeah, awesome. Looking back at these 4 years, we have covered what your favorite moments were. What is... let's look at one other thing. What is your deepest regret, if you have any?
I think my deepest regret, it was pushing myself a lot in a certain year. The professor who had bought into the company, also his company had a distribution deal with Simon & Schuster, and he had told me, like, you need to publish a certain number of books a year. It was just me. It basically is still just me. And now I have this social media assistant, though, so I'm not losing my mind all the time and can actually have a social life. But I was working myself to the bone. And we have since parted ways, and we are still with Simon & Schuster Distribution. And there was a book that was signed and was supposed to be published in 2025. And I was like, I want to know that I have the time to work with the author to polish this more, to make it as good as possible. Because no one wants to put out a book that they're not 100% proud of. You know, obviously I'm human. Some typos have made it through into, I think, almost every single book. And do I wish that wasn't the case? Of course. But, you know, beyond that, I'm proud of every single book we have put out. And so that means that instead of 6 books, which is what I have been told by my professor, need to be out every single year, we have 5. And I asked Simon & Schuster, I'm like, I had been told it needed to be 6. Is this going to be a problem? And they were like, no, you could publish 1 book a year if you wanted to.
Oh.
We're still just, we're your distributor. We're here when you have books. You know, obviously if I started losing their company a ton of money, that would be a different discussion. But this is about putting out new stuff, which always brings in money before the returns start coming in, and then you have to deal with losses. And that's accounting's so fun in publishing. But hearing that, I was like, I have been working myself like crazy, and had I known I didn't have to, maybe I would have done 4 books a year off the bat. You know, I am slating out 2027 and 2028 already. And it's looking like it's going to be fewer books per year. Not because my authors don't have ideas that I like, but give them the time they need to work on their stories. Give me the time I need to work on their stories. And make it sustainable. Because even if there was all this money, you know, hopefully if there was a ton of money, I'd actually be able to hire more help, which would then make the whole thing more sustainable. But to be able to pay someone fairly, that's a lot. And so I don't know when that's going to happen. And therefore, if I can be responsible in the amount of work I take on, you know, I didn't take on what I didn't think I could do, but I've learned that wasn't comfortable. And so I kind of wish I had not just taken my professor's word for it and asked Simon and Schuster to verify that rule. Because then I could have been like, I get that you want to make as much as you can with your share in the company, but that's not feasible right now unless you give me labor from your company, because you have employees and I don't. And so I think that's a regret I have.
I think that's it sounds like a fair regret. Let me put it that way. Yeah. And I can also imagine that if you have spread out the books a little bit more, like you say now, 4 books instead of 6 books per year, you also can. That's just my what I can imagine. Let me put it that way. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. You can spend more time per book, spend more attention per book, and bring it maybe even to a higher level than what you might have been able to when you would publish 6 books.
Yeah, I think that at minimum, also being able to give it more marketing time, you know, not like, obviously we market all our books as much as we can with the 3 thrillers coming out essentially back to back. A lot of it has been about this book is coming, focus on this. But once those books are out, we will go back to mostly rotating between everything that we have published and the things that are still coming. And if we have more gaps in between, that gives a lot more time for the social media system to fill our posting calendar with, we don't have a pub date in 2 weeks. So let's promote XYZ from the list that's already been out. And that'll just give everything else more screen time and hopefully get more eyes on it. And then hopefully that turns into more buyers and readers, and then they will hopefully love it and tell their friends, etc., etc.
Awesome. From what your regret was in the past, what are you looking forward to achieve in the future? What are you hoping to achieve in the future compared to what you have already done?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for a title to hit a bestseller list. I would love for an adaptation screen in some capacity, because I know all my authors are dreaming of that as well. Movie, TV show, limited series, streaming, like, you know, just something that gets more people on it, you know, because obviously they're authors. I'm a book publisher. We love books. But we also like seeing adaptations of things or watching something and then finding out it's a book and being like, ooh, I want to read that. And so that would be really cool. I think in a way, I'm almost more if I had to pick one or the other, I would almost rather pick that than a bestseller list at this point, because I think that's the way to the general public's attention span at this point. But also I just think it would be so much fun. You know, if you make the New York Times bestseller list or the USA Today bestseller list or any other one, it's great. That's an achievement. But it's like you get a checkmark kind of, you know, bucket list And then there's nothing else to really do with it aside from slap it on every marketing thing you have. But if an adaptation is in the works, even if the author isn't involved, which would then mean the publisher isn't super involved, depends on the contract that gets offered, how much say the author and publisher or author or publisher would have. But it could still be like, here's something that's ongoing. We can talk about this. And then the thing would hopefully come out and not be stuck in developmental hell, but like would actually materialize. And then you could be like, I'm so excited to talk about this thing. And it would just be a more sustained level of excitement.
I can totally imagine that. And I think there are quite a lot of authors who would like to see their works in one way or another developed in another way than just book form. Or I say just book form, but the books are the heart of the story, of course. But indeed to bring it to another level, movie, film, any screen adaptation,
bring it to a broader audience.
That you can show or have others show your world, your characters, your story. That is so awesome. So yeah, awesome, great. That's a very good thing to look forward to. I remember from a live stream you said that you started, and you said it earlier as well, you started with publishing a few fantasy books.
Yes.
That was what from what you told me earlier, it was maybe a little bit of pure coincidence and a mix of a deliberate choice.
Yes. So when I opened up to queries publicly, so like, if I only publish my friends, it's going to look like I started a vanity publishing company just for my friends, but they don't have their name on it, so they can like quote unquote pretend to be more legit. And I was like, no, they need to submit. I need to like it. And I have given, revise and resubmit notes to people I know and to people I don't know. But I got a ton of fantasy. I got one giant dystopian. I got a historical fantasy that was all over the place, did not know what it was doing, also was not something I could do. It was, you potentially could have gone for two different audiences, but those two audiences are very like polar, like opposites. And when I told the author that, they lashed out, and that was a block.
Yep.
It happens. You got to remember, people in publishing, even in traditional publishing, are human. But of what came in early that I liked and was willing to sign on were fantasy. We've been closed to public submissions since October 2023, like early. Like I was open for submissions basically May 1st, 2022 until October 2023. That's fast to close for a publishing house. But it is only one person. So, an editor at a bigger publishing house might have been closed sooner, but I can't reopen because I, like I said, do the editing. I also do the formatting. I'm also the one who's going over every single cover draft. It's not like, oh, the design department's handling that. I don't have to touch it. Right. And so my capacity is limited. And because we were publishing fantasy for the start, our rights agent at first was like, oh, Inimitable Books is a fantasy imprint. I'm like, no, we are a fiction imprint that has published a lot of fantasy right now. And now we've published a writing prompt book, a divination deck. So now we're just a publisher that mostly does fiction. But I'm happy with that. And I would love to get a sci-fi, a dystopian, a historical, eventually. This is not a call for submissions. I'm still close. But, you know, when I got the thriller pitches from Becca C. Smith, Kate Kavanaugh, they weren't expecting me to make an exception for them. They were asking, in the future, would you be interested in these books? Like, we know you're closed. We are not trying to use our friendship with you to get a publishing deal. Just, would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. Do you have anything ready? And they were like, wait. And I'm like, no, because I've been wanting to move into this genre for a while. And I'm also really sick of everyone assuming we're just a fantasy imprint, because even our romances have fantasy elements in them. And I love them. Fantasy was the first genre I fell in love with as a kid. Mystery was the second genre I fell in love with as a kid. I didn't fall in love with romance until I was a tween. So that was like 10 years after, you know, me being born. I didn't start reading my own novels, really, like actual novels, until I was 6, 7, 8. I definitely read Cam Jansen, which was like, she was a girl detective, but that was like a chapter book. You know, it is mystery, but I don't really count it as mystery because it's not like you had as much red herrings. And when you say mystery, you're not thinking of that. You're thinking Agatha Christie or Ruth Royer or, you know, all of these. Dan Brown, although he does more thriller, not just straight up mystery, but you get the idea. So I was like, yeah, do you have something? And they were like, oh. I'm like, Don't start a conversation with me that you're not like ready to back up. But at the same time, our author, Chandra Arthur, who had co-written the writing prompt books, and I knew, as someone who always said, oh, I'm a historical fiction author, I also write horror, she had this thriller idea. And I loved it. And it's Mother Mercy, and it's a female Dexter, basically. Female serial killer who only goes after bad people. And she was like, is this okay? Like, I've never really written this genre before. I'm like, if it's a good story, it's a good story. Like, I don't care how you've been introducing yourself on the internet until now, because I genre hop, other people genre hop. We're not a single genre publishing company. Like, just send it to me. If I think it needs more work to the point that I can't sign it right now, I'll tell you. And she sent it, and I loved it, and we worked on it, and now it's been published.
Nice. Excellent. So one last thing you already hinted at. You said you have slated already this year, 2027, 2028. I know you mentioned Kate Kavanaugh earlier. Her books are coming out. What are other books that you have upcoming, if you can talk about it already?
Yeah, so for the rest of 2026, we have Beyond Ever After, which is the sequel to Until the Last Page by Chantal Godori. Until the Last Page was a real life person, falls into a book of fairy tales, has to find a way home, is in very familiar fairy tales that do not go the way she remembers them. And she has to navigate them and fight some fairy tale villains, help a frog prince find true love's kiss as part of the deal she made, maybe deal with someone else who makes deals but is a trickster, who goes by the name of Rumpelstiltskin. You know, a lot of fun things, a lot of magical shenanigans, and then book 2, more stuff happens. And I can't really say more than that without spoiling book 1, but I love book 2 as much as I love book 1, and it explores the magical world more, but I think it also gets more into the psychology of a lot of the characters that, like, you get hints at in book 1, but is expanded on in book 2, and I really love that.
Perfect.
Then October this year, we have The Devil's Ruin, which is the end of the Love and Hell trilogy, which started with The Devil's Waltz and was followed up by The Devil's Trials. This is the book that I've been wanting since I first beta read it, like a decade ago. Well, at this point, I think 11 or 12 years ago, because when The Devil's Waltz was published, it was 10 years after I first heard about it. And then book 2 happened the next year. So yeah, we're approaching 12 years from me first hearing about book 1. In 2027, we have A Shadow Dark and Daring, which is the sequel to A Diamond Bright and Broken. Diamond Bright and Broken is a Rapunzel retelling. The girl can cry diamonds, which is a power that is heavily abused by her parents, but she also does not resist because those gems are used to pay for her beloved sister's medical treatments. But then she goes off on an adventure to see maybe there's something else I can do, because she's suddenly told that, hey, your gift is actually a curse. And if it's a curse, maybe you want to lift that. And so the second book is a big departure. We've kind of left the Rapunzel part in the past. That was a jumping off point. And the sequel is super exciting because the first book is about like, what will you do for family and the people you love, but also what do you do in the face of dishonesty from those people close to you? And the sequel is very much about like, how do you define your self-worth? And if you've lived your life entirely one way, can you change? If you can't, does that mean you're a bad person? And like a lot of interesting questions, but told in an interesting story. After that, we have another thriller coming out, but I don't want to talk too much about it because it hasn't been officially announced, and it won't be officially announced by the time this episode comes out. But if you've been liking the thrillers, don't worry, 2026 is not the end of that. I'm really excited for this one. More female rage, screw the patriarchy, like a really fun time, but also a lot of like traumatic topics like are covered in Mother Mercy. So readers, read the trigger warning list once that is made public and take care of yourself. But I think it's an amazing book. And then after that, it's kind of being like, hey, I think there will be at least one other fantasy. Well, a book with fantasy elements. It's actually going to be the sequel to From the Diary of Agnes Yeager, which is a dark academia book, but had elements of fantasy. This is going to be a sequel to that. So super, super exciting. But then I don't really want to talk about 2028 yet because things might move around depending on authors being like, life is lifing. I did not get this done like I thought I would. And so I have to be flexible, but I've also been seeding with the authors of being like, I would like your next book to come out in 2028. That means I would like the draft in late 2026 if possible. So yeah, we have plans, and if we continue becoming more successful, then we can do more fun things.
Nice. That's awesome to hear. Well, those were the questions that I have, that me and Hala have. Is there anything else you would like to tell us? Maybe about the celebrations of your 4th anniversary or other things that we haven't talked about yet?
I think I would like to say to authors who are looking to pursue traditional publishing, this is going to sound harsh, but it's really true. You need to assume that you are not the exception. So do not query agents when they are close to submissions. Do not query editors at publishing houses, including me, who accept unagented submissions when we are closed. The main rule, though, is to treat everyone like they're human, because we are. I mean, I know AI is trying to take over everything, but, the people who are in publishing, at least the people who actually know how to use technology, we're the ones who are like, we don't want AI in this stuff. And so that means a human is still on the other end of that email. Even if they have an AI program being like, do you want to write this response? They're still going to read the email. So we're all here for the love of books. Don't be abusive and be the reason that someone wants to quit. You know, you need to make connections and you don't want to be burning bridges.
That's an excellent advice, I think. I think that's a very good closure. So I wanted to thank you so much, Zara, for this interview. And if in the future you'd like us to feature one of the books that are upcoming, let us know. You have my data, so you can always.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
having
welcome.
me.
You're welcome. It's so fun and inspiring to have an indie publisher, and to also show people that it's not just the big 5 publishers. There are so many others who you can also go to.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's awesome.
Yeah. They're more than just the big 5, you know? The big 5 are super successful. There are pros and cons to all sizes of publishing, and then that compared to self-publishing, indie publishing. Of course, the word indie publishing can mean you're not big 5 or you're self-published, so that's always fun to figure out. But yeah, I think if you're a writer, or even if you're a reader who thinks you might want to become a writer at one point, like, just get involved with other people who love reading and feed that love, because it is not an easy career, regardless of what angle you come at it from. And if you're a reviewer and you're like, oh, it's easy, I just buy all the books, you know, great. Thank you for supporting the industry. We need you.
Yeah, that's I've heard about reviews and things, and sometimes I feel that people are not. How shall I say that? Are not always that good with reviews. Let me put it that way. But it really depends on the person who is reviewing, and well, I guess that's part of the process. But yeah.
Yes.
But indeed, it is so important to show the respect that you would like to receive as well. If you were in the shoes of an agent or an editor or anyone else in the publishing industry. So keep that in mind. And with that, Zara, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to your next projects.
Do you have a writing event, a book release, or a crowdfunding campaign for a book release coming up? Be sure to fill out the form that's linked in the show notes below. The next edition of our show is May 15th. If you'd like your news to be in that show, submit the form at the latest on Sunday, May 11th. Hala and I would like to thank Brad for informing us about the release of his book, Time Clones Book 2, and we'd like to thank Zara Hoffman for her interview. It was truly wonderful to have you. Spring is in full swing with allergies hitting authors left and right. Which brings me to the question, what allergies, if any, does your character have? We wish you a wonderful weekend and see you in the next one.